James Joyce's Dubliners, a collection of 15 short stories published in 1914, offers a starkly realistic portrayal of Dublin at the turn of the 20th century. Its enduring power lies in its unflinching examination of paralysis, a condition that permeates the lives of its characters and the very fabric of the city. This paralysis manifests not merely as physical immobility, but more profoundly as spiritual, moral, mental, and emotional stagnation, a deep-seated inability to engage with life meaningfully, to forge connections, or to pursue genuine personal liberation. It is a spiritual malaise, a collective inertia that suffocates hope and ambition, leaving individuals trapped in a cycle of habit and disillusionment. Joyce's work is not merely a collection of stories, it is a diagnostic study of a society struggling under the weight of its own history, its suffocating social conventions, and the pervasive influence of religious and political dogma. The paralysis he depicts is a subtle yet inescapable enemy, a pathological unity that binds Dubliners together in their shared condition. A condition that manifests across the distinct stages of human experience he outlines: childhood, adolescence, maturity, and public life. Each narrative thread, woven with scrupulous meanness and stark realism, peels back layers of illusion to reveal the unvarnished truth of lives lived in arrested development. The stories are carefully structured to demonstrate how early experiences and ingrained societal patterns lead inexorably to an adult existence, characterized by a profound lack of agency and a pervasive sense of alienation. This isn't a sudden collapse, but a slow, creeping decay, a spiritual atrophy that Joyce captures with unflinching precision, making Dubliners a critical, albeit somber, testament to the human condition under duress. The foundational cause for the pervasive spiritual paralysis depicted in Dubliners can be traced to the complex and often oppressive socio-political climate of Ireland, particularly Dublin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Ireland was then under British rule, a colonial legacy that profoundly impacted its national identity, economic development, and cultural autonomy. This external control fostered an environment of suppressed aspirations and a deep-seated sense of powerlessness among the Irish populace. Compounding this was the powerful, often conservative, influence of the Catholic Church, which exerted significant control over moral and social life, frequently advocating for a rigid adherence to tradition and discouraging independent thought or radical change. The burgeoning Irish nationalist movement, while a powerful force seeking self-determination, often became entangled in its own internal debates and ideological limitations, sometimes inadvertently reinforcing a sense of intellectual stagnation rather than fostering genuine progress. This confluence of colonial subjugation, clerical authority, and the often fractured landscape of nationalist aspirations created a fertile ground for a collective psychic inertia. The citizens of Dublin, caught between the weight of their history, the strictures of their faith, and the elusive dream of independence, found themselves in a state of perpetual anticipation, yet paralyzed from taking decisive action to shape their own destinies. The lingering effects of this political subjugation manifested in a palpable lack of economic, social, and political advancement, a collective stagnation that mirrored the personal inertia of the city's inhabitants. This interplay of internal religious strictures and external political control created a fertile ground for the societal and cultural stagnation that saturates the stories, trapping Dublin in a cyclical existence characterized by trivial routines and a desperate, yet often unfulfilled, hope for something more. Joyce's deliberate choice to structure Dubliners across 4 distinct life stages: childhood, adolescence, maturity, and public life is a testament to his intricate understanding of how societal pathologies become ingrained. The stories within childhood lay the groundwork, depicting how early innocence is often corrupted by the pervasive atmosphere of the city, introducing characters to the subtle constraints that will later define their lives. These initial experiences, often marked by a nascent awareness of entrapment or a premature loss of wonder, plant the seeds of future inertia. As characters transition into adolescence, the narratives amplify the growing disillusionment and the burgeoning awareness of a world that offers few genuine avenues for personal fulfillment. This stage is characterized by a confrontation with reality that frequently shatters youthful idealism, revealing the limitations imposed by social expectations and the stifling environment of Dublin. The youthful impulse to break free often falters against the ingrained patterns of conformity and the palpable absence of opportunity. The collection's progression into maturity marks the full blossoming of the Paralysis, showcasing characters who have largely resigned themselves to lives of quiet desperation. These narratives delve into the routines, frustrations, and unfulfilled desires of adult Dubliners, highlighting their inability to break free from the patterns established in their youth. Relationships are often strained, careers are stagnant, and dreams are deferred indefinitely, becoming the ghosts of what might have been. This is where the spiritual and moral decay, hinted at in earlier stages, becomes most pronounced. The characters are often trapped in loveless marriages, unsatisfying work, and a general sense of existential ennui. Their lives a monotonous repetition of days devoid of genuine purpose or passion. Joyce's masterful depiction of these adult lives underscores the cumulative effect of the societal pressures and personal compromises that have rendered them incapable of meaningful change. The final section, Public Life, extends the examination of Paralysis to the broader civic and institutional spheres of Dublin. Here, Joyce casts a critical eye on the figures and systems that ostensibly govern and represent the city, revealing their own internal decay and ineffectiveness. The paralysis is no longer merely a personal affliction but a systemic disease, infecting the very institutions meant to foster progress and identity. Political discourse often devolves into rhetoric and inaction. Religious figures may be shown to be spiritually compromised or complicit in the city's stagnation. And social structures fail to provide avenues for authentic engagement or upward mobility. This section serves as a powerful indictment of a society whose public face mirrors the private despair of its citizens. Joyce presents a vision where even the arenas of power and influence are characterized by a profound lack of vitality and a subservience to the status quo, reinforcing the idea that Dublin is a city held captive not just by individual failings, but by the very fabric of its public existence. The stories here often culminate in a stark realization of the pervasive nature of this societal sickness. A sickness that has seeped into every corner of Dublin life. Within the intricate tapestry of Dubliners, the concept of epiphany serves as a crucial, albeit often agonizing, counterpoint to the pervasive theme of paralysis. An epiphany, in Joyce's literary context, is a sudden, profound moment of spiritual or intellectual revelation. A flash of insight that illuminates the character's true state of being. These are not necessarily moments of joy or liberation, often, they are brutal confrontations with reality. Stark disclosures of the character's own complicity in their entrapment, or a sudden, devastating understanding of the futility of their desires. For example, in stories like Araby, the young protagonist's epiphany is one of crushing disillusionment, where his romanticized expectations of love and adventure are shattered by the mundane reality of a closed bazaar and his own perceived immaturity. The revelation is not a stepping stone to freedom, but a painful confirmation of his limitations. Similarly, in The Dead, Gabriel Conroy's climactic epiphany, occurring as he stands by the window and reflects on his wife's past love, is a moment of profound self-abnegation and a humbling realization of his own emotional shortcomings and the vastness of life and love he has not truly experienced. In Evelyn, the protagonist's epiphany is a moment of tragic confirmation, as she stands on the precipice of escape. Her deep-seated sense of duty, fear, and familial obligation crystallizes into an immobilizing realization that she cannot leave her life behind. This epiphany is not a step towards freedom but a confirmation of her entrapment, a stark and agonizing understanding of her own paralysis, rooted in a complex interplay of internalized guilt and the overwhelming weight of past promises and familial duties. These moments of epiphany, while exposing the character's paralysis, also represent a critical narrative strategy employed by Joyce. They are the brief, sharp jolts that momentarily disrupt the inertia, offering a glimpse of truth that the characters have otherwise successfully avoided. The power of these epiphanies lies in their often anticlimactic nature. Rather than propelling the characters towards action or redemption, they frequently serve to deepen their understanding of the inescapable nature of their condition. It is as if Joyce is showing us that even when the truth is laid bare, the weight of paralysis can be so profound that genuine change remains out of reach. The characters are left staring into the abyss of their own making, their moment of clarity offering no solace, only a starker understanding of their spiritual and moral confinement. This serves to heighten the tragic dimension of the collection, emphasizing that in Dublin, even moments of profound insight often lead not to escape, but to a more profound awareness of being trapped. The collection eschews definitive resolutions, with epiphanies often culminating in an anticlimax, leaving characters, and indeed the reader, in a state of unresolved contemplation. These moments can be intensely painful, a stark confrontation with one's own limitations and failures, a sudden spiritual manifestation that highlights the chasm between aspiration and actuality. The concept of simony is subtly woven into the fabric of Dubliners, serving as a potent metaphor for the corruption that erodes spiritual integrity and exacerbates the condition of paralysis. Historically, simony refers to the illicit buying or selling of ecclesiastical offices or spiritual privileges, a practice that contaminates the sacred with the profane. In Joyce's Dublin, this concept is broadened to critique any transactional or morally compromised relationship that infects the spiritual and ethical core of the city. It suggests a world where genuine spiritual connection has been replaced by calculation, where the pursuit of power or material gain has superseded moral or ethical considerations. This corruption, whether within religious institutions or in the broader social interactions of the characters, contributes to a climate of moral decay. When spiritual authority or social standing can be bought or sold, it erodes trust and fosters cynicism, leaving individuals spiritually adrift and more susceptible to the inertia of paralysis. It represents the transactional nature of relationships and values, where spiritual or moral worth is often traded for material gain or social advantage. This debasement of intrinsic value reflects a society that has lost its spiritual compass, where genuine faith and moral integrity are undermined by the pursuit of worldly benefits. This theme of simony underscores a central critique within Dubliners: the compromise of authentic spiritual and moral life by worldly concerns and institutional corruption. The characters themselves often engage in subtle forms of spiritual simony, prioritizing superficial appearances, social standing, or personal convenience over genuine moral or ethical conduct. For instance, the perfunctory nature of religious observance for many characters, or the way in which social obligations are met with a hollow ritualism, can be seen as manifestations of this transactional approach to life. They engage in these practices not out of deep conviction, but out of habit, social pressure, or a desire to maintain a facade. This pervasive compromise weakens the spiritual backbone of the community, making it easier for the larger societal paralysis to take hold. The stories implicitly suggest that when the sacred is treated as a commodity and moral integrity is negotiable, the very foundations of individual and collective well-being begin to crumble, leading to a profound spiritual emptiness. The term Nomen, borrowed from geometry, offers a unique interpretive lens through which to understand the pervasive sense of absence and incompleteness that characterizes the characters and the city of Dublin in Joyce's collection. In its most basic geometric sense, a Nomen is a part that, when added to a figure, produces a larger figure that is similar to the original. Metaphorically, it can represent that which is missing, the foundational element that, if present, would complete the whole. In Dubliners, this concept resonates deeply with the characters' spiritual and emotional voids. Many of them are defined by what they lack: agency, love, courage, purpose, or the ability to connect meaningfully with others. Their lives are often characterized by an incomplete existence, a sense of being perpetually on the verge of something significant, yet never quite achieving it. This inherent lack, this Gnomon-like quality, contributes directly to their paralysis. They are unable to act because they are fundamentally incomplete, lacking the essential components for decisive action or fulfilling engagement with life. The Nomen motif, with its connotations of incompleteness and absence, mirrors the fractured lives and stunted emotional growth of the characters. They are depicted as incomplete beings, parts of a whole that are missing, leaving them in a perpetual state of seeking that which they cannot define or attain. The Nomen motif further amplifies the theme of paralysis by suggesting a state of arrested development, a perpetual incompleteness that prevents growth and fulfillment. Characters in Dubliners often find themselves in a cyclical pattern, repeating the same mistakes or enduring the same disappointments. Much like a Gnomon that, when added, recreates a familiar, larger form. This implies that their lives are not progressing towards a resolution or a more developed state, rather, they are perpetually trapped in a modified, yet fundamentally similar, iteration of their initial limitations. The sense of absence represented by the Nomen is not a void to be filled, but a fundamental aspect of their being that defines their inability to move forward. This can manifest as a lack of self-awareness, an emotional barrenness, or a profound disconnect from the realities of their own lives. The Nomen thus becomes a symbol of their spiritual and moral stasis. A constant reminder of what is missing and why they remain incapable of breaking free from their debilitating paralysis. The notion of moral paralysis is intrinsically linked to the broader theme of spiritual paralysis in Dubliners, representing a fundamental inability to discern or enact righteous action. It describes a state where characters are no longer guided by a strong moral compass, their ethical faculties dulled by habit, self-deception, or the pervasive cynicism of Dublin society. This moral decay often stems from a series of compromises, small betrayals of principle that accumulate over time, eventually rendering individuals incapable of making virtuous choices. They may recognize wrongdoing, but lack the will or the moral clarity to correct it. This is evident in the often hollow social rituals and superficial politeness that mask underlying resentments and unfulfilled desires. The characters' interactions frequently reveal a subtle but persistent moral laxity, where self-interest and convenience often override genuine empathy or ethical responsibility. Joyce portrays characters who exhibit a subtle but persistent ethical laxity, their lives shaped by a series of small betrayals of principle that accumulate into a profound inability to engage with life in a morally coherent or spiritually fulfilling manner. This moral paralysis is not a sudden cataclysm but a gradual erosion, a slow poisoning of the ethical spirit that leaves individuals spiritually weakened and emotionally stunted. Joyce portrays this through characters who, despite moments of potential insight or fleeting remorse, ultimately retreat into familiar patterns of inaction or self-justification. Their moral compass, if it ever existed, has been so distorted by the pressures of Dublin life that it can no longer reliably guide them towards integrity. This condition contributes significantly to their overall paralysis because it undermines their capacity for self-governance and meaningful engagement with the world. Without a firm moral grounding, they become susceptible to external influences and internal vacillation, unable to commit to a course of action that requires ethical conviction. The city itself, with its ingrained habits and suppressed aspirations, seems to foster this moral inertia, creating a feedback loop where individual moral weakness reinforces societal paralysis, and vice versa. Joyce's depiction of Dublin and its inhabitants can be understood as a critique not only of the city's specific circumstances but also of the broader phenomenon of modern life, where traditional anchors of meaning, religion, community, and clear social roles have begun to dissolve. The spiritual paralysis he captures is a reflection of a deeper societal malaise, a disconnection from authentic spiritual or existential purpose. This reflects the modernist literary concern with the breakdown of established values and the ensuing crisis of identity and meaning in a rapidly changing world. Dublin, in this context, becomes a microcosm of modern urban existence, a place where individuals are often isolated, alienated, and adrift in a sea of superficiality. The meaningless lives of inactivity that Joyce describes are not solely attributable to Irish history or politics, but also to the universal challenges of finding purpose and connection in the face of modernity's dislocating forces. The Epiphany in modernist literature, as exemplified by Joyce, often serves a dual purpose: to momentarily pierce the veil of illusion and to underscore the profound difficulty of achieving genuine liberation. These moments of revelation are not typically cathartic releases that lead to immediate change, rather, they can be deeply unsettling, forcing characters to confront the stark reality of their limitations. This often results in an anticlimax, where the profound insight gained leads not to a breaking of chains, but to a deeper, more conscious understanding of being trapped. This aligns with the modernist sensibility that often grapples with the complexities and ambiguities of human experience, eschewing simplistic resolutions. The Epiphany, therefore, becomes a tool to expose the enduring nature of spiritual paralysis, highlighting how even moments of profound clarity can ultimately reinforce the character's sense of entrapment within their suffocating environment, revealing the subtle and insidious ways in which they are bound. The thematic weight of Simony in Dubliners extends beyond a mere critique of religious corruption. It speaks to a broader societal condition where spiritual and moral values have been commodified and debased. This transactional view of life, where integrity and genuine connection are sacrificed for superficial gains, be it social status, material comfort, or perceived piety, fundamentally corrodes the collective spirit. It creates an environment where authenticity is devalued, and individuals are conditioned to engage in a form of spiritual and moral accounting. Performing acts of faith or decency not from conviction, but from calculation. This debasement of true values renders the community vulnerable to the insidious spread of paralysis. As genuine spiritual nourishment becomes scarce, replaced by hollow rituals and self-serving compromises, the city's inhabitants are thus left spiritually impoverished. Their capacity for meaningful action and authentic living significantly diminished by this pervasive moral and spiritual marketplace. The Nomen motif, as a symbol of absence and incompleteness, provides a profound insight into the nature of paralysis by suggesting that the characters are defined not by what they possess, but by what they lack. This void, this fundamental incompleteness, prevents them from achieving a state of wholeness or self-actualization. Their lives are characterized by a perpetual incompleteness, an inability to fully form or connect, mirroring the geometric concept. This sense of absence can manifest in myriad ways: a lack of courage to pursue dreams, a deficit in emotional expression, or a profound disconnect from genuine human intimacy. The Gnomon suggests that this incompleteness is not merely circumstantial but is an inherent aspect of their condition, contributing to a pervasive inertia that makes meaningful progress or decisive action virtually impossible. Their existence becomes a testament to what is missing, a constant reminder of their static, unfulfilled state. The critical analysis of Irish nationalism in the context of Dubliners reveals Joyce's complex and often critical perspective. While the fervent desire for national independence was a powerful force, Joyce perceived that the movement, in its fervor, had also contributed to a form of intellectual and spiritual stagnation. He observed that a preoccupation with national identity, while understandable, sometimes overshadowed the urgent need for individual agency and moral accountability. The idealized vision of a liberated Ireland, often promoted by nationalist rhetoric, stood in stark contrast to the grim realities of Dublin life, where a different kind of subjugation, a spiritual and psychological one, persisted. Joyce's work suggests that true liberation must begin with the individual breaking free from internal constraints, a process that was often hindered by a nationalistic narrative that, while externally focused, could inadvertently discourage introspection and self-critique, thus perpetuating a different form of paralysis. The moral paralysis in Joyce is a crucial aspect of his exploration of the human condition within the urban landscape. It describes an inability to act according to one's conscience, a state where ethical discernment is dulled or overridden by inertia, self-deception, or societal pressures. Characters often recognize the moral implications of their actions or inactions, yet they find themselves incapable of initiating change, preferring the comfort of inaction to the difficult path of moral rectitude. This moral stasis contributes directly to their spiritual paralysis, as a compromised moral compass inevitably leads to a diminished capacity for purposeful living and authentic connection. Joyce illustrates this through characters who exhibit a subtle but persistent ethical laxity, their lives shaped by a series of small betrayals of principle that accumulate into a profound inability to engage with life in a morally coherent or spiritually fulfilling manner. The pervasive influence of religion and the specific cultural context of early 20th century Ireland are deeply intertwined with this moral paralysis. The Catholic Church held immense sway, and its teachings, while offering spiritual guidance, could also foster a climate of fear, guilt, and strict adherence to dogma that discouraged independent moral reasoning. Characters often found themselves navigating a complex web of religious obligation and personal desire, leading to internal conflicts and a tendency towards self-deception or outward conformity rather than genuine ethical conviction. This societal emphasis on outward piety and the avoidance of sin could, paradoxically, lead to a paralysis of authentic moral choice, where individuals became more concerned with appearances than with the inner integrity of their actions. The collection's exploration of Irish identity crisis is central to understanding the root causes of the paralysis. For generations, Ireland had been under British rule, leading to a fractured sense of self, a national identity often defined in opposition to the colonizer. This prolonged subjugation had stifled indigenous cultural development and fostered a deep-seated ambivalence about what it meant to be Irish. Joyce captures this crisis by depicting characters who are neither fully connected to their Irish heritage in a vibrant, progressive way, nor fully assimilated into the dominant British culture. They exist in a liminal space, grappling with a sense of displacement and a lack of clear cultural or personal moorings. This existential uncertainty, this internal conflict over identity, contributes significantly to their inability to act decisively or to forge a coherent sense of purpose. The search for an authentic Irish identity had become, for many, a source of paralysis rather than a catalyst for self-definition and empowered action. The notion of spiritual paralysis as the overarching theme of Dubliners is not merely an abstract literary concept. It is a lived reality for Joyce's characters, reflecting a profound spiritual and emotional inertness that permeates their existence. This condition is characterized by a deep-seated inability to engage with life's possibilities, a lack of vital force that renders them passive observers rather than active participants in their own destinies. It is a spiritual emptiness, a void where authentic connection, meaningful aspiration, and vibrant living ought to be. The stories meticulously illustrate how this paralysis manifests in the mundane routines, the unspoken resentments, and the deferred dreams of Dublin's inhabitants. It is a collective malaise, a societal sickness that has seeped into the very soul of the city, leaving its people trapped in a perpetual state of arrested development, unable to break free from the suffocating grip of their circumstances and their own internal limitations. The recurring motif of epiphany in modernist literature, particularly as explored by Joyce in Dubliners, serves as a powerful counterpoint to the pervasive theme of paralysis. These are not moments of easy resolution, but rather stark, often painful, revelations that illuminate the character's predicament. An epiphany is a sudden flash of insight, a moment of stark clarity that exposes the truth of a situation, a character's own limitations, or the futility of their desires. For the characters in Dubliners, these moments often lead to an anticlimax, where the profound understanding gained serves only to deepen their awareness of their inescapable entrapment, rather than inspiring action or liberation. The epiphany in Joyce's work frequently leads to a more acute perception of their spiritual and moral paralysis, underscoring the difficulty of achieving genuine freedom from the suffocating conditions of their lives. The concept of Simony and Nomen in Dubliners functions as a sophisticated literary device to articulate the multifaceted nature of the city's spiritual and moral decay. Simony, representing the corrupt commodification of spiritual values, suggests a society where integrity has been bartered for worldly gain, leading to a pervasive moral rot. This ethical compromise erodes the very foundations of authentic existence, leaving individuals spiritually vulnerable. Concurrently, the Nomen, as a symbol of absence and incompleteness, highlights the inherent lack within the characters and the city itself. It points to the foundational elements that are missing, preventing wholeness and self-realization. Together, these concepts articulate a profound sense of spiritual and moral depletion, where the characters are simultaneously corrupted by transactional relationships and defined by their fundamental incompleteness, contributing to their pervasive state of paralysis. The stream of consciousness precursor aspect of Dubliners lies in Joyce's innovative narrative techniques, which laid the groundwork for later modernist explorations of inner life. While not fully developing the technique as seen in his later works like Ulysses, Joyce in Dubliners already demonstrates a profound interest in rendering the internal landscapes of his characters. Through detailed descriptions of their thoughts, perceptions, and emotional responses, he offers glimpses into their subjective experiences, hinting at the complex, often fragmented, flow of consciousness. This focus on the inner world, on the psychological states that underlie outward actions, or inactions, reveals his pioneering approach to capturing the nuances of human thought and feeling, setting a precedent for subsequent literary endeavors that would delve even deeper into the intricacies of the mind. His meticulous portrayal of characters' often unspoken anxieties and desires foreshadows the more extensive interior monologues that would become a hallmark of modernist fiction. The depiction of the Dublin middle class in Dubliners is central to Joyce's critique of societal stagnation and spiritual decay. This segment of Dublin society, caught between aspiration and resignation, often finds itself defined by its adherence to rigid social conventions, its anxieties about reputation, and its passive acceptance of a life dictated by habit and tradition. They are characters who possess a degree of education and social standing, yet this often serves only to highlight their internal emptiness and their inability to enact meaningful change in their lives or in the city around them. Joyce portrays them as individuals who dream of escape or of a more vibrant existence, but who are ultimately tethered by a crippling fear of social ostracism and a deep-seated inertia. Their moral compass, heavily influenced by the pervasive doctrines of the Catholic Church and the restrictive social mores of the era, often leads them towards a form of self-deception or a resigned acceptance of their limitations. They are figures who yearn for connection but often fail to achieve genuine intimacy, their relationships frequently marked by misunderstanding, passive aggression, or a fundamental lack of empathy. The stories meticulously catalogue the small disappointments, the missed opportunities, and the quiet despairs that characterize their daily lives. The very aspirations that might drive individuals in other societies are, for the Dublin middle class of Joyce's portrayal, often warped into a source of further frustration, a constant reminder of what they are not and what they cannot achieve. This segment of society, therefore, becomes a potent symbol of Ireland's broader condition, embodying a collective paralysis that Joyce saw as a direct consequence of a compromised national identity, oppressive religious influence, and a stifling social environment. Their adherence to a superficial respectability often masks a profound spiritual and moral hollowness, making them key players in the city's pervasive state of inertia. Synthesizing the diverse threads of narrative and thematic concern within Dubliners reveals its profound depth, positioning it not merely as a collection of short stories but as a meticulously crafted diagnostic study of a city suffering from pervasive spiritual and moral paralysis. Joyce functions as a keen observer, a clinician of the soul, meticulously documenting the symptoms of a collective malaise that afflicts Dublin across all its social strata and stages of life. Each story acts as a case study, offering a window into the varied manifestations of this paralysis, the inertia that prevents action, the disillusionment that crushes hope, and the spiritual death that results from a life lived without genuine purpose or vitality. The collection's overarching structure, progressing from childhood innocence to the complexities of public life, underscores how this condition is not an isolated affliction but a pervasive societal disease that takes root early and deepens with age. The recurring motif of the Epiphany, while sometimes offering a fleeting glimpse of truth, often serves to starkly illuminate the inescapable nature of the characters' predicaments, reinforcing the diagnosis rather than offering a cure. Joyce's dispassionate, observational tone, his precise prose, and his refusal to offer easy resolutions or moral judgments contribute to this clinical atmosphere. He presents the reality of Dublin life with an unflinching gaze, dissecting the interplay of religious dogma, political subjugation, and stifling social conventions that conspire to keep its inhabitants trapped. Therefore, Dubliners can be understood as a powerful, albeit melancholic, report on the state of a nation's spirit. A detailed examination of the forces that lead to widespread stagnation and the quiet erosion of individual and collective will. The literary reception of James Joyce's Dubliners has evolved significantly since its publication, moving from initial obscurity and controversy to its current status as a cornerstone of modernist literature and a profoundly relevant text for understanding the modern urban condition. Initially, the collection faced challenges in finding a publisher, a testament to its unflinching portrayal of Dublin life and its implicit critique of Irish society and its institutions. When it finally saw the light of day, its impact was more of a slow burn than an immediate conflagration, gradually earning recognition for its artistic merit and thematic resonance. Over time, critics have lauded its formal innovation, its stark realism, and its masterful evocation of a specific time and place that, paradoxically, speaks to universal human experiences. The collection's enduring relevance lies in its prescient exploration of themes that continue to resonate deeply in contemporary society. Urban alienation, the feeling of being trapped by circumstance or societal expectations, the corrosive effects of inertia, and the universal human quest for meaning and liberation in a world often characterized by conformity and spiritual emptiness. Dubliners serves as a powerful reminder that the forces that can lead to societal stagnation and individual despair are not confined to early 20th century Dublin. The psychological landscapes Joyce so precisely renders the quiet desperation, the unfulfilled desires, the moments of profound, often painful, self-awareness remain acutely recognizable. Its continued study and appreciation underscore its position not only as a literary achievement but as a vital cultural document, offering enduring insights into the complexities of the human spirit grappling with its environment. Hugh Kenner's influential theory, often articulated in his work Joyce's Voice, provides a critical lens through which to understand the intricate narrative presence that shapes the reader's perception of characters and their Pervasive paralysis in James Joyce's Dubliners. Kenner argues that Joyce employs a unique narrative strategy, often described as an objective correlative, where the author's voice, while seemingly absent or objective, actively guides the reader's interpretation of events and characters. This voice is not necessarily a judgmental one, but rather a carefully modulated presence that allows the reader to experience the paralysis of the Dubliners from within their own consciousness, yet with an awareness of the author's underlying ironic detachment. The cause of this narrative technique stems from Joyce's modernist ambition to represent reality with unprecedented fidelity, moving beyond traditional omniscient narration to a more immersive and psychological portrayal of his characters' inner lives. He sought to capture the texture of consciousness, and this necessitated a subtle yet pervasive authorial presence that could frame and contextualize these fragmented experiences. The intellectual context for this approach can be found in the broader shifts in literary modernism, which emphasized subjective experience, fragmented narratives, and a questioning of absolute truth. The narrative development of Joyce's voice, as theorized by Kenner, involves a meticulous control of perspective and tone. Rather than overtly commenting on the paralysis of his characters, Joyce often allows their own thoughts, perceptions, and limited understandings to unfold, creating a sense of raw realism. However, it is the subtle ironies, the carefully chosen words, the precise descriptions of setting and gesture that reveal Joyce's guiding intelligence. This voice operates by immersing the reader so deeply into the character's subjective world that the reader begins to internalize their limited perspective, only to have that perspective subtly undermined by the author's more comprehensive, often ironic, understanding. For instance, in stories like Araby, the boy's fervent romantic idealism is presented with an almost unblinking sincerity. Yet the narrative's understated descriptions of the drab surroundings and the mundane transactions at the bazaar hint at the impending disillusionment. The voice creates a kind of dramatic irony, where the reader, guided by Joyce's subtle cues, anticipates the character's painful realization before the character themselves fully grasps it. This process is not about the author telling the reader what to think, but rather about carefully constructing an environment and a consciousness that inevitably leads the reader to a particular understanding. The result of this integrated Joyce's voice is a profound and often unsettling reader experience. The reader is not merely an observer but becomes, to some extent, a participant in the character's paralysis. By experiencing the world through their limited viewpoints, the reader develops an intimate understanding of their stagnation, their fears, and their unfulfilled desires. However, the ironic detachment embedded within Joyce's voice prevents the reader from becoming solely sympathetic, fostering instead a critical awareness of the systemic and personal factors contributing to the paralysis. This duality of immersion and critical distance is key to Kenner's interpretation. The reader feels the weight of Dublin's inertia, the death and life, but simultaneously recognizes the forces, both internal and external, that perpetuate it. This is not a didactic approach, but an experiential one, where the understanding of paralysis emerges organically from the narrative structure and the nuanced authorial presence. The reader is left with a deep, often melancholic, appreciation for the human condition as portrayed by Joyce. A condition marked by struggle, self-deception, and the elusive nature of true freedom. The impact of Kenner's Joyce's voice theory extends beyond a mere academic analysis of literary technique. It illuminates how Joyce, through his masterful control of narrative, transforms the reader into an active participant in the exploration of spiritual and moral paralysis. This technique is fundamental to the enduring power of Dubliners, as it allows the stories to resonate with universal themes of human limitation, unrealized potential, and the search for meaning in a seemingly indifferent world. By understanding how Joyce's voice guides our perception, we gain a deeper insight into the psychological mechanisms of paralysis and the subtle ways in which individuals can become trapped by their own circumstances and societal pressures. Kenner's theory underscores that Joyce's genius lies not just in his depiction of Dublin, but in his innovative method of enabling readers to feel, and therefore truly understand, the profound inertia that afflicts his characters. This active engagement with the narrative ensures that the paralysis depicted in Dubliners remains a potent and relevant exploration of the human condition, offering timeless insights into the complexities of consciousness and the struggle for liberation. Analyzing James Joyce's Dubliners through a post-colonial lens reveals how the collection deeply reflects and critiques the fragmented cultural identity of Ireland during a period of significant British influence. A period often characterized by a pervasive sense of Irish identity crisis. The cause for this critical examination lies in the historical reality of Ireland's subjugation and its long struggle for self-determination. For decades, Ireland had been under the rule of the British Empire, a reality that profoundly impacted its social structures, political landscape, and, crucially, its cultural and national identity. This colonial context created a complex dilemma for Irish artists and intellectuals, many of whom grappled with a sense of alienation from their own culture and a profound awareness of their nation's compromised status. The social atmosphere of Dublin, as depicted by Joyce, was one steeped in this colonial legacy. A city caught between its own historical traditions and the overwhelming cultural and political dominance of its colonizer. This created a palpable sense of inertia and a struggle for authentic self-expression, themes that saturate Dubliners. The narrative development, when viewed through a post-colonial framework, highlights how the stories in Dubliners serve as potent allegories for Ireland's fractured identity. Characters often exhibit a form of internalized oppression, a psychological paralysis that mirrors the nation's political subjugation. Joyce meticulously portrays individuals who are disconnected from their own heritage, mimicking the mannerisms and cultural values of their colonizers. Or conversely, desperately clinging to a romanticized, often inauthentic, notion of Irishness. The theme of paralysis itself can be interpreted as a metaphor for the stifled potential of a nation under colonial rule, unable to fully realize its own destiny. For example, the characters' inability to act decisively, their emotional inertia, and their spiritual malaise can be seen as manifestations of a society whose agency has been systematically undermined. The stories often depict a yearning for escape, a desire for something more. But this escape is frequently framed by the limitations imposed by the colonial environment. The longing for exoticism or for a more vibrant existence, as seen in Araby, can be read as a displacement of a more fundamental yearning for national liberation and cultural self-possession. Furthermore, the characters' preoccupations with social status and superficial appearances can be interpreted as a distraction from the deeper issues of national identity and self-worth. The result of this post-colonial critique is a nuanced understanding of the paralysis depicted in Dubliners. It is not simply a matter of individual failings but a deeply ingrained societal condition exacerbated by centuries of foreign rule. The stories expose the ways in which colonial power can erode a people's sense of self, leading to a pervasive cultural amnesia and a loss of authentic connection to their own history and traditions. Joyce's detached, yet empathetic, portrayal of his characters' struggles suggests that the Irish identity crisis was a complex phenomenon, shaped by both external pressures and internal divisions. The stories do not offer easy answers or overt political pronouncements, but rather present a stark, unvarnished depiction of the psychological and spiritual consequences of living in a colonized society. The collection, therefore, becomes a powerful indictment of the forces that contribute to cultural fragmentation and a testament to the enduring human spirit's struggle for self-definition in the face of overwhelming adversity. The search for Irishness becomes a central, unresolved quest within the narrative. The impact of applying a post-colonial lens to Dubliners is profound, offering a richer and more historically contextualized interpretation of Joyce's work. It elevates the collection beyond a mere study of individual psychology to a critical examination of national identity formation under duress. By understanding the historical realities of British colonialism in Ireland, the reader gains a deeper appreciation for the pervasive sense of paralysis, alienation, and unfulfilled potential that characterizes the lives of Joyce's Dubliners. This perspective highlights how the personal struggles of the characters are inextricably linked to the broader political and cultural struggles of their nation. Dubliners, through this lens, becomes a vital document of Ireland's complex journey towards self-awareness and independence, demonstrating how literature can serve as both a mirror reflecting societal conditions and a catalyst for critical introspection. The collection's enduring relevance lies in its powerful, albeit melancholic, portrayal of a people grappling with the profound and often debilitating effects of cultural and political subjugation. A struggle that continues to resonate in the examination of identity in post-colonial contexts worldwide. James Joyce's Dubliners, while a masterwork of the short story form in its own right, also stands as a significant harbinger of modernist literary techniques, particularly in its nuanced exploration of consciousness and its foreshadowing of the stream of consciousness. The collection, through its careful construction and narrative voice, offers a precursor to the internal landscapes that would dominate later modernist fiction. Joyce masterfully employs free indirect discourse, a technique that allows the third-person narrator's voice to subtly merge with the thoughts, feelings, and perceptions of his characters. This is not an overt plunging into the chaotic flux of raw thought, as would become characteristic of full stream of consciousness, but rather a carefully curated entry into the character's subjective experiences. The reader is positioned not as an objective observer, but as one who perceives the world through the limited, often distorted, lens of the protagonist. This restricted point of view, where the narrative unfolds almost entirely from within the character's own consciousness, rather than through an omniscient, detached narrator, creates a profound sense of immersion. It allows Joyce to meticulously detail the internal hesitations, the fleeting desires, the ingrained habits of thought, and the often unspoken anxieties that define his characters' existences. For instance, in Evelyn, the reader is privy to Evelyn's agonizing internal debate, her memories and fears swirling around the decision to leave or stay, presented not as a logical deduction but as a visceral emotional struggle. This careful rendering of inner life, the way thoughts and sensations are presented in a somewhat unmediated fashion, lays crucial groundwork for the more radical explorations of interiority found in works that explicitly utilized stream of consciousness, such as Joyce's own later masterpiece, Ulysses. The fragmented nature of thought, the associative leaps, and the emphasis on subjective reality over objective fact, all present in nascent form in Dubliners, became the very building blocks of the stream of consciousness technique, demonstrating Joyce's early intuitive grasp of how to represent the complex, often non-linear, flow of human thought. The story Araby in James Joyce's Dubliners offers a profound exploration of a young boy's awakening, marked by a poignant epiphany that shatters his innocent illusions. The narrative traces the boy's infatuation with his friend's older sister, a love cultivated through romanticized notions gleaned from the dusty pages of books and the clandestine whispers of his peers. His days are consumed by this burgeoning adolescent affection, a singular focus that imbues his mundane existence in Dublin with a vibrant, albeit illusory, purpose. The driving force behind his yearning is the promise of Araby, a bazaar, a distant beacon of exotic enchantment that he believes will provide him with the perfect gift to win the affection of his beloved. This quest for a token of love becomes the focal point of his youthful idealism, a cause that elevates his mundane reality into a grand romantic adventure. The social context of this yearning is one of a stifling Dublin environment, where opportunities for escape and vibrant experience are limited, pushing the boy's imagination to seek solace and adventure in the external world, embodied by the exotic allure of the bazaar. His journey to Araby is thus not merely a physical one, but a deeply emotional and psychological pilgrimage, fueled by a potent mix of adolescent desire and a yearning for something beyond the ordinary confines of his life. The expectation that Araby will be a place of magic and wonder, a setting befitting his romantic aspirations, is intensely cultivated in his mind. The narrative development of Araby is characterized by the relentless buildup of the boy's anticipation. He endures the drudgery of school, the trivialities of his domestic life, and the teasing of his friends, all while his heart beats with the singular purpose of reaching the bazaar. Each obstacle, each delay, only intensifies his resolve and his romantic idealization of the event. The story meticulously details his internal world, the swirling emotions and vivid imaginings that accompany his desire. His encounters with the girl, fleeting and often imagined, serve as fuel for his fantasies. The impending journey to Araby is imbued with a sense of destiny, a chance to prove his worth and to manifest his romantic ideals into tangible reality. The setting of North Dublin, with its dim streets and muted lives, serves as a stark contrast to the vibrant, imagined world of the bazaar, amplifying the boy's desperate need for escape and fulfillment. His uncle's forgetfulness, a minor domestic inconvenience, becomes a significant hurdle, delaying his departure and intensifying his anxiety. The climactic moment arrives when he finally reaches Araby, a place he envisions as a dazzling spectacle. However, the reality that confronts him is a stark departure from his dreams. The bazaar is already closing, its once vibrant stalls now dimmed, the sounds of commerce fading. The air is filled with a sense of mundane finality, a far cry from the exotic enchantment he had so ardently anticipated. This jarring contrast between expectation and reality forms the crux of his disillusionment. The result of the boy's visit to Araby is a profound and crushing epiphany. Standing amidst the dwindling crowds, listening to the banal banter of the stallholders, the boy is struck by a sudden, harsh realization. The romantic fantasy he had so carefully constructed crumbles around him. The exotic allure of the bazaar dissolves into the ordinary, the mundane, the commonplace. He sees himself not as a romantic hero, but as a foolish boy caught in the throes of self-deception. The grand gesture he had planned, the perfect gift for his beloved, now seems utterly insignificant. A symbol of his own naive idealism and misplaced passion. The epiphany is one of stark disillusionment, a painful stripping away of innocence. He understands that his romantic notions were products of his own imagination, fueled by literature and adolescent yearning, rather than a reflection of the true nature of the world or the object of his affection. The final realization is a bitter one, a moment where the boy grasps the vanity of his dreams and the hollowness of his expectations. His epiphany is not one of divine revelation, but of earthly, personal failure. A moment that marks a significant step from childhood innocence into the harsher realities of adult experience. The impact of this epiphany in Araby is deeply personal and transformative for the young narrator. It signifies a profound loss of innocence, a harsh introduction to the complexities and often disappointing nature of reality. The romantic idealism that had sustained him is replaced by a sobering understanding of the gap between imagination and experience. This moment of disillusionment is a crucial element in his transition from boyhood to adolescence, forcing him to confront the limitations of his worldview. The story's ending, with the boy standing in the darkness, repeating the word paralysis, encapsulates the lingering emotional residue of his experience. It suggests an internal paralysis, a feeling of being trapped by his own crushed hopes and the dawning realization of his own insignificance in the grand scheme he had imagined. This experience serves as a microcosm of the broader theme of paralysis explored throughout Dubliners, illustrating how even seemingly grand quests can end in anticlimax and a sense of spiritual inertia. The story, through this powerful depiction of a childhood epiphany, illustrates Joyce's mastery in capturing the subtle yet devastating moments that shape human consciousness and contribute to the overarching sense of stagnation that defines Dublin in his collection. The Dead, the concluding story of James Joyce's Dubliners, serves as the narrative's ultimate culmination. A story that dissects the intricate layers of paralysis and culminates in Gabriel Conroy's profound, albeit melancholic, epiphany. The story opens with an atmosphere of warmth and conviviality, set at an annual Epiphany party hosted by Gabriel's aunts, Kate and Julia Morcan. This seemingly joyous occasion, however, is subtly underscored by an undercurrent of unspoken tensions and a pervasive sense of routine that hints at the deeper themes of stagnation within the characters' lives. Gabriel, the protagonist, is a well-to-do, cultured man, a teacher and music critic, who navigates this social gathering with a veneer of intellectual superiority and a detached amusement. Yet, beneath this polished exterior lies a complex web of insecurities and a subtle dissatisfaction with his life and his relationships. The initial cause of his spiritual crisis is not immediately apparent but is woven into the fabric of his character and his interactions with his wife, Greta, and the other guests. His internal monologue reveals a man grappling with his own identity, his place in Irish society, and his perceived role as an Irish gentleman abroad. The social context is that of a Dublin Irish society that is itself caught in a state of flux, grappling with its cultural identity under British influence, a societal paralysis mirrored in the personal lives of its characters. The narrative development of The Dead intricately unfolds Gabriel's internal conflict and his gradual confrontation with truths he has long suppressed. His interactions with various characters, particularly his wife Greta and his colleague Miss Ivers, serve as catalysts for his awakening. Miss Ivers challenges his intellect and his perceived complicity with the English, questioning his writing about Ireland from a detached, external perspective. This intellectual sparring ignites a flicker of unease within Gabriel, forcing him to confront his own sense of cultural detachment and his discomfort with explicit Irish nationalism. Simultaneously, his relationship with his wife, Greta, becomes increasingly significant. As the evening progresses, Greta appears distant and preoccupied, her thoughts seemingly miles away. This emotional disconnect fuels Gabriel's own anxieties and insecurities about their marriage. The story masterfully builds towards a crucial turning point when, after the party, Greta reveals the poignant story of her past love. Michael Fury, a young man who died of consumption after waiting for her in the rain. This revelation, delivered with profound emotion, shatters Gabriel's carefully constructed emotional walls and exposes him to a depth of feeling and a tragic past that he had never anticipated. The narrative meticulously details Gabriel's internal turmoil as Greta recounts Fury's story. His initial feelings of jealousy and resentment gradually giving way to a dawning empathy and a profound understanding of a love and a sacrifice far beyond his own experience. The result of Greta's story and Gabriel's subsequent reflection is a profound and multi-layered epiphany. As he lies in bed listening to Greta's quiet sobbing, Gabriel undergoes a radical shift in his consciousness. He moves beyond his own ego and his petty grievances, experiencing a deep sense of empathy for Michael Fury, a man he never knew but whose passionate devotion and tragic end now resonate deeply within him. This empathy allows him to see his own life, his own perceived successes, and his own emotional limitations in a stark new light. He realizes the superficiality of his own existence, his intellectual pride, and his inability to truly connect with others on a profound emotional level. His epiphany is not one of triumphant self-discovery, but of humble, melancholic recognition of his own spiritual and emotional poverty in comparison to Fury's sacrificial love. He recognizes the vastness of human experience, the depths of love and loss that lie beyond his own confined world. This realization is both liberating and deeply saddening, opening his eyes to the true nature of life, death, and the enduring power of human connection, even in the face of mortality. He sees the spectral presence of Fury, a testament to the enduring impact of past loves and sacrifices, a realization that transcends his own immediate concerns. The impact of Gabriel Conroy's epiphany in the dead is immense, both for the character and for the overall thematic coherence of Dubliners. It represents the narrative's final, potent illustration of paralysis and the possibility of transcending it, even if only through a painful awareness. Gabriel's experience signifies a breaking of the chains of his own self-absorption and provincialism. He gains a profound understanding of the past and its influence on the present, a recognition of the sacrifices and loves that shape human lives. This moment of clarity allows him to see beyond his own limited perspective and to connect, albeit fleetingly, with a broader human experience. The story concludes with Gabriel's acceptance of his own insignificance in the face of the vast currents of life and death, a feeling that is both mournful and strangely peaceful. This melancholic acceptance, this living and dying, is presented not as a triumphant escape from paralysis, but as a profound, albeit somber, form of spiritual awakening. It is a cathartic moment that offers a glimpse of transcendence, even as it underscores the pervasive sense of melancholy that defines Dublin and its inhabitants. The story, and indeed the collection, ends not with resolution, but with a deep, resonant understanding of the human condition, forever altered by the weight of past lives and the quiet dignity of enduring love and loss.